Ostynn the Ostrich and the Fantasy of Flight by Kermit Weeks. Our story begins on a bright sunny day in a place where the birds and the animals play. From the sun comes a warmth, a slight breeze in the trees, with no cares and no worries. All could do as they please. The birds they all chirp, others preen to be clean. By a creek creatures slurp, so serene is the scene. In the woods a slight growl, from some flowers a buzz. Distant hills a faint howl. Crickets chirp just because. And while most things are right and at peace in this land, we find an ostrich named Ostynn with his head in the sand. Now Ostynn's a bird, somewhat shy but quite big, who would hide from his world in a hole that he'd dig. But from where he could see, this was all that he knew, with his head underground, with its limited view. And so day after day, time would pass, he'd exist, there he'd stay, come what may, unaware what he'd missed. But on this day he wondered, with his head in the ground. His thoughts pondered and wandered, and began to spin round. He stood there in thought, thinking all that he could, thinking all that it brought, while he stood where he stood. Ostynn then viewed himself from an outside perspective, and looked back at himself with a view more objective. He stood there steadfast, not a breath, not a blink, and then pondered his past. On this thought he did think. Was there more to be found? Was this all that there was? With his head underground, has he done just because? He stared, then he smiled, for just then did he see that the joke was on him, for he now saw that he had been leading a life, one he now found amusing, that was of his own choice, that was of his own choosing. He chuckled and laughed, how he'd failed with such flair. With his head in the ground, with his tail in the air. He watched and he waited, while he thought from this distance. Could there be more to life? Was there more to existence? Until now he'd been happy, living life in the dark. But then suddenly from somewhere, from within, came a spark. Startled, surprised, something not felt before. Had there been something missed he could now not ignore?